And if we do this, Nigeria will be great again. Thank you very much.
Solidarity.
That's a very fantastic point, because we need to fix our refinery so as to ease the burden from the masses in the country. So we move on to Comrades Soweto from Wired.
Well, comrades, let me start by first commending those who have spoken before me. They have touched on the art of the issue. Yeah, particularly commend the comrade from the University of Lagos, who spoke, with fire in their heart, something which I think gives us hope, of the transformation of the student movement. Because what is also very important is that at every stage of our struggle, when we are at this kind of forum discussing what next, we have to be looking at, how to begin to rebuild our movement. Because when you look at the challenges we're having at struggle today, compared to the past when struggle used to thrive much more than what it is today, you see that there are certain differences in what we have and what exists before. And I think a component of what we have before is the fact that you have a more organized student movement, young people who are very ironically conscious of not just the crisis in the education sector, but also how that relates, to the country as a whole. And they are always very prepared to come out to struggle. In fact, now that we're having the Israeli-Palestine war going on, I don't know how many of our comrades will realize that as at the 80s, the NANS constitution, had as part of its content, solidarity to the Palestinians, the Palestinian struggle. The NANS constitution offers solidarity to the Palestinian struggle. It also offers solidarity to Chinese students who were struggling against the dictatorship. That was, how very, very developed and advanced, the student movement was at that time, as well as NANS. So then I'm not sure that any NANS leaders, and I'm sorry to say this on camera, will be able to explain to you, what is happening, in the Israeli-Gaza war, or what should be the appropriate class position that the student movement should take. That is how much collapsed ironically the student movement is. And I think that is why one has hope, given the speech we have had from the Comrades for Union, about the possibility of transforming the student movement. I very much commend you. And I also like to commend all comrades in the room, as well as those online. It might seem that we are small. I mean, before we started the meeting, a journalist had said, why didn't we have so much protest or even any at all at the Lekki toll gate yesterday? Of course, there was some attempt to have a procession, but obviously it was not on the same level as it was maybe a year or 2 years ago. And I simply responded to him and I said, we are at a stage of this struggle where we need to sit down and discuss how to move forward. And why do I think that way? Because I think that we are back to what Nigerian people faced in 2020. If comrades will remember, the EndSARS struggle itself broke out a week after a general strike declared by the NSC and TUC was prematurely suspended on September 28, 2020. The EndSARS struggle broke out, I think October 7 or thereabout, just about a week after. Although the EndSARS protest broke out on something we think was completely unrelated, to the NLC or to the issue of fuel price around which the NSC had initially called this strike. But for comrades who participated in the EndSARS strike, and who can still remember the hunger of young people and the frustration they express, you realize that there is a correlation, with the struggle that the NSC suspended and the EndSARS revolts which broke out in April. In fact, I think that part of the reasons why many young people in that EndSARS struggle were opposed to the idea of leadership was actually because when they saw the kind of leadership that the labor movement represented, they felt that is not the kind of, that they cannot, the idea of leadership is completely not something they can work with. Because at that period, and even to some extent up till now, the kind of leadership that the labor movement offered at that time was a leadership that was not prepared to struggle, that was corrupt, that was in bed with capitalist ruling elite, that was not prepared to fight, a leadership that was so dishonest that when he said he was going to fight tomorrow, then in the middle of the night, it would have a deal with the government and call off and suspend action. So seeing that kind of leadership, young people felt that they don't need the leadership. And it's important to signpost and put on record all of this. Because many people, when they are reviewing the EndSARS struggle today, they in many ways talk about it in a way that I think is denigrating towards young people. As if young people didn't know better, or they acted only out of ignorance. And that is why I'm approaching the discussion in this manner. Because you then realize that whatever mistakes or errors that activists like us who have ideas can say was committed in the EndSARS struggle, they were not committed because young people were idiots. It was also, those errors were committed because of the kind of perfidious example, terrible example of leadership that the leadership of the organized labor movement had presented to the Nigerian people. And that was why the struggle went that it was. And why I think that our conversation today is very important is that we need, like I said, we are more or less in that same situation today. Over the past 5 or so months now, we have also had a new government in Nigeria, which right from day one has declared a war against all of us. An economic war of impoverishment. Before we are able to recover, begin to talk about the kind of suffering that we are going through. Many people have been reduced to paupers today. It's much worse than what was the case during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was so terrible and devastating in this country. Because at least during COVID-19 pandemic, you won't go out now, whether you are hungry or not. At least if you are on your bed or your mattress, you won't fall down. And you can give excuse to your wife at home or to your friends that COVID, they are low. Everybody have COVID the one time. But today, there's no lockdown. They have not closed your shop. You are going, you are coming. But yet, you are not able, to present anything at home as a result of your daily struggle and your sweat. Just speak to any Okada person, or any taxi person, or bus drivers. It's a tale of woe. Okada people now, they now say they work for filling station. Because Moshenpa, Lolong, Dani, filling station. Because the cost of fuel now is now more than the cost of transport fare. So that at the end of the day, by the time they make all their money, and they have bought fuel, there's hardly anything left to take back home. Meanwhile, the Okada will still spoil, and they will still have to repair it. So some of them will say that they think it's even better not to go out to work at all. Sometimes they don't go out to work, at least whatever money they have, they will not use it to buy food. That is where most people have been reduced to, many of us. Workers are now working to work. And despite this unrelenting devastation on our living standards, we have had a labor leadership that continues to play ping pong with the question of a general strike. You declare a strike, then before the D-Day you suspend it, you enter into negotiation. The negotiation goes on for so long, nothing happens, and you call another one. Then on the day before the other one will start, you suspend it. And at the end of the day, they have gotten some offers from government, none of which all of us know will be able to address the fundamental impoverishment that faces the working people. First and foremost is that the 35,000 naira award that has been given is so inadequate and so minute when you compare the inflationary trend between May and now. How much is a bag of rice today? How much is fuel? How much is electricity tariff? So that at the end of the day, whoever collects that 35,000 among members of organized labor, they are not likely going to see any difference in their living standards. But much more worse is the fact that that award will only go to a minority
of the working population. Because those who work in government offices, especially federal civil servants, are most likely to be the ones that will benefit from this. Many workers at the state level may not get anything at all, because even the 30,000 minimum wage, which was signed into law over 4 years ago, there are states that are not yet paying it. In fact, according to information that we have, Zamfara State has not even paid 30,000 minimum wage at all. They are still paying the old wage of, I think, 18,000 naira, a minimum wage of over 1 decade ago. That is the stage that the states are, which shows that this award may not even go to them. What about workers in the private sector? Would they even get it at all? What about millions of buy fuel at 700 per litre? So when you at the end of the day look at what the NSC claim to have won, it has not resolved any of our problem. That is why the question of a mass struggle still remains on the agenda. And that is why I thought that this meeting is very important. Because what the leadership of the Labour movement has demonstrated so far now is that, one, they cannot be trusted to fight diligently and relentlessly for the interest of the working people, especially the working class as a whole. And what that means for me is that for those of us who are activists, we have to accept that we have reached a junction where we have to find alternative route to struggle. And what that means is that we have to go back to what we used to do in the past, which would be to begin to call for mass action. There's no reason why we cannot begin to declare a day of action in the next few weeks to say that all Nigerians who have become tired of this impoverishment, we want to have a town hall meeting today. If you have trouble food, don't bother to come. But the sorts of us that this is affecting, we have a town hall at TIB, we have a town hall at Lekki Tollgate, we have a town hall at Ojota, and that becomes a basis, for protest marches, for demonstrations. We have to return back to that level of organizing in order to use that kind of effort to put pressure on the labor leadership not to abandon the struggle, to defend the living standards of all Nigerians. And for us to do this, it requires that we work together. I think that we need a national coalition of left-leaning and activist organizations, because we have passed through this period before. In the period of the anti-military struggle, and I think that Comrades would, can also say a lot to this. The labor movement, especially under Ali Shiroma, failed to also offer any institutional support to the struggle of the Nigerian working people against military autocracy, and it became the responsibility of activists and socialist elements to organize resistance. And that's why I think that we need to borrow from those examples. The YRC, the JAF, the TIB, CORE, and other organizations can come together and begin to call these of actions to fight back. The last point I would like to make is this, which is that after everything is said and done, we must never agree to those who say that Nigeria's problem is insoluble. It is a lie. This country is one of the most endowed in the world. Africa is one of the most endowed in the world. 99.9% of our problems are man-made. Yes. They are product of a system of capitalism that has been imposed on us for the purpose of making a few people rich, stealing our collective patrimony, while the rest of us are living in poverty. It is this system that we need to smash and replace it with a socialist economic system that can ensure that the mass of the people benefit from the abundance that nature has given to us. Solidarity.
Thank you very much, Comrades, for that. We move on to our next speaker, Comrade Ayoyinka from ASC.
Revolution! No. Revolution! No. Revolution!
Well, I just want to think for 1 minute, then I will sit down. So that our press can also have their seats. I hope you like it. Yeah, we have enough seats. Yes. Revolution, revolution, we want to do something before we go. Revolution,
Comrades, we need to do
something before we go. Revolution,
we must to do something
before we go. Revolution,
we will do something before we go. Revolution.
thank you very much. So I have my seat. Two things why I want to sit, Comrades, because I don't want to take too much time, and also because I want the press also to feel relaxed and sit. I want to appreciate our comrades that have spoken, starting from the student activist, Temitope, which is I think she's the most important speaker speaking here today, not just because she's a lady, but because she's representing a very important class in our society, which we really need to seriously work on. And Comrade mentioned it. Student movement, we should not deceive them at all. We should not mice work with them at all. They have lost it. They have lost it. There are few people among them that are trying, that they are pushing. And many of those few that are met, they don't even have big positions. Just student reps and all that. They are pushing very strong, but the big position as coordinator, very useless set of young people. Just going around in vehicles and thinking that is what struggle is all about. Following politicians up and down, collecting money, having meetings, thinking they are important. Once you graduate, you are useless. They dump you out. You are no longer nurse. So what they want to use it to do? You cannot mobilize anybody. So we really need to hit them hard because they are very important in the liberation of our country. Very important. People that stood for the independence of Nigeria, people that stood for the democracy of this country, people that stood against anti-people policies in the 80s, in the 90s. Students led it together with comrades on the street. They didn't sit down. They were there, many of them. So we really need to speak to them and bring out vision, young people with vision to take over. And like I said some years ago, if NAS is not working, NAS should be put to one corner and students should join solidarity groups, organizations that are ready to push. So I admire your courage and comrades, and we are very happy to have you here today. Yes, also to our senior comrades. Comrades don't like us saying senior comrades, but we'll still say it because it's obvious that our comrade I was not around when Gani was protesting, and we came around in the later time of his life. These are comrades that are being realized on Gani for him. It's a privilege, and we are privileged to have you here, sir. Thank you very much. Comrade Soweto has done justice, in summarizing all that is needed. But what I'm just going to do is just to draw some facts on ground. And he has done justice. It's very simple. NAS, enough is enough. We're tired. When NAS cancelled that September protest, we went to meet them in their office, proficients and some of us, to scatter the place. Like, you are shameless people at Yaba. But we told Nigerians that NAS has disappointed. This is not the first. So, NLC, thank you. This is not the first time. We are coming out October 1st, and we came out massively, and we are ashamed. Even this last protest that they did in Lagos, it was shame that brought them out, nothing else. They were not interested in any struggle. Comrade was there now. They were behaving, trying to segregate people. NAS behaving, NLC behaving like children. When we were doing EndSARS protest, we understand young people that felt when they saw revolutionary people that these people are so agitated. We understand them. They are young. I'm not meant something. But NLC, trying to say, I'm not talking about anybody, I'm talking about the NSC chairman in Lagos herself, pointing out comrades that these people are not among us. Police will arrest them. What sort of rubbish? Sort of rubbish. I'm still even here to write an article about that. These are supposed to be whole comrades with wisdom. You don't segregate during a protest. It's for everybody. Because you feel some of us are too radical, started pointing them out, telling police to keep those people. They just came for their cool kind of protest. So while we continue to push them in one corner, there's a need for real activists and comrades to organize together, regardless of what else is going to do, what they will do. At least EndSARS happened and they were not involved. They didn't mobilize for it, they didn't push for it. Even after the killing and massacre, what did they say? What did they do? And this is not to bring down the courage of strong workers that are pushing, but the leadership and the big problem in our society. So to sum it up, I'm very glad that it did. I will start this way, for the EndSARS. Picking from the question that some journalists have been asking, I know why was the memorial a little bit quiet this year? Oh, is it that people are afraid or people are tired? Not at all. That is not the case. In 2020, before EndSARS, people were afraid and they were tired. There was a protest. In 2021 memorial, people were still afraid and tired. They were protest. 2022, they were fear. People still came out. The reason is very simple. Organizing and publicity was low this year. And when it started late. And also, so this is information some of us might not know, some movements a little bit pull out from organizing a little. They still try to encourage those doing it, but they did not put their full-blown strength into it. No member of Piggyback was mobilized to EndSARS Memorial toll gates. Nobody. I didn't mobilize anybody. I went as a comrade on my own. On my initial went as a comrade on his own. For my idea, the people that you saw there was personal. We didn't mobilize anybody, which is not what we want to do. We used to do. We mobilized for every struggle, but it was intentional because, as Comrade Soweto said, this time is not for Jim or paparazzi. This time is to sit down and have a retrospect, thinking of what have we done and what are we going to do. Why? Because not even one of the over 32 recommendation of the panel report has been done. Not one. I'm telling you. Not even one. Apart from that, young people are still in prison. Darren Williams have done 3 birthdays in prison. A young boy that was in school talking about education, that the government were not giving him free education. He was working, a musician, he reared dogs, was doing business to send himself to school, does not have parents. And you still want to pick that boy up December 2020 just because of you started hunting down young people maybe after the protest. And still in Kirikiri till date. And the few people that we have been able to get out, it has been here. It has been like we wanted to free the entire Kirikiri prison. Just how many people? The people that have been released so far, the record that I know, I don't think they are up to 15, the ones that I know. I don't know, some other lawyers, maybe from personal works or families, we're able to get a lawyer. But majority of these young people are not from well-to-do families. So when they cannot even get lawyer, they cannot afford lawyers. Since 2020. And we have confirmed 34 names of people that are still in prison. That's the one we could even get. Because the government were not even ready for us to make sure we see them. So when you have information of all that the simplest thing of making that Lekki toll gate